Today we're going to be discussing Mongoose Bravo, Vietnam by Tim McCullough, a time of reflection over events so long ago. Now, this is a great personal memoir of the Vietnam War. It was very easy to read. It has an authenticity without any type of pretense or recrimination. Has plenty of humor, humility, and action while conveying Tim's story without the sorrow and bitterness that he must have felt putting pen to paper. Really an engaging and authentic retelling of his experiences as an infantry soldier in B Company, 1st Cavalry Division in the Vietnam War. It's a gripping account that details his life and struggles of war in a strange and foreign country. What started for Tim, the author, as a way of bringing closure to a grieving mother morphed into a memoir covering his deployment duty and eventual return to the U.S. after the end of the war. Imbued with the emotion that he felt during this conflicted time, along with letters and journal entries from decades ago, this memoir is a testament to the sacrifice that these brave men and women made fighting on foreign soil. To quote the author, recounting from the tragedies of war and the chaos of combat as an infantry soldier, "We lived, we fought as a unit, covering each other's backs. Most came home to tell their own stories, but many didn't." This memoir really gives me chicken skin and one of the best that I've read for so many years. I really can't recommend it enough. And on this, I don't randomly just recommend books. It really has to move me, and this one really did. I was really surprised at the amount of times the author was sick and got injured during his time in the war. It should really serve as a reminder of just how very dangerous this war truly was. You know, the author relayed his actual experiences in a gritty, no-nonsense description of what it was like to be a combat grunt in a quite unpopular war and what he had to do to survive. He also related what it was like to return home to the world and the less than warm welcome he received when he got there. What I really enjoyed reading about was how Tim, the author, did such a terrific job of juxtaposing his moral choices as a rifleman under fire and then examining those same choices some 50 years later. His firefight accounts relate well to the often myopic view of the Vietnam grunt as opposed to higher command. Reading through this memoir, and full disclosure, I've read it several times, I felt the fear, I felt the action, and the anger of what it must have been like for a young man doing their duty, even though many didn't agree with the war, but put their life on the line anyway and still went. This story is told from the author's fading memory, aided by a journal and letters he kept during his time in Vietnam. While there's no doubt in my mind that he was an infantry soldier in the 1st Cav, can somewhat at times diminish his risks in combat. He could have also expanded his detail on several of the horrors and challenges he experienced. In my humble opinion, he didn't spend enough time discussing the basic training that he went through or the advanced infantry training at the time, which would have really rounded out the story in a much fuller way. I also felt Tim, the author, was in a rush to complete the book, and he really missed several opportunities to expand on topics that would enhance the details of his tour, which would certainly have been welcomed by the reader. I understand that it did take 20 years to get it written. Really written by a guy I'd love to and be happy to sit down and have a beer with. It was a really easy to read personal memoir of the Vietnam War. It was a lens into the life of a combat grunt doing his conflicted duty in a conflicted time. And it's much different than the other memoirs you may have read where it's generally about an officer or higher levels of command and those type of decisions they had to make. But this memoir was really what it was like to be a grunt, a leg, a rifleman in the dirt. Again, it was a really interesting lens, and honestly, it's been one of the best military memoirs I've ever read, and I've read my fair share. If you want a good look into the life trials and tribulations of what it was like to be an infantryman in late 60s Vietnam, I really recommend you read this book. My rating here is 5 out of 5 stars, the highest rating that I can give. I was really moved after I read it. And again, I read it multiple times, and I couldn't stop recommending it to everybody I know, even people that don't like military history or military memoirs. So that's my recommendation to you. Thanks again. My name's Griffin from legendsofhistory.org, and thanks for listening.